सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम।
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम,
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम।
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम,
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम।
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम,
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम।
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम,
बोलो राम 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 राजा राम।
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम।
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम।
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम, जय जय सिया राम।
जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम,
जय सिया राम।
जय सिया राम। बोले सियावर रामचंद्र की, सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम, लाउडली। श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम,
श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम।
जय जय राम,
जय जय राम,
जय जय राम,
जय जय राम।
प्रिय सियावर रामचंद्र की, पवन सुत हनुमान की, बोलो भाई सब संतन की, सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की।
Hari Om everyone. Is this the exams time? The finals? Obviously, I can see that I don't see anyone. So let's do the magic prayer and see if there is a sudden jump in the numbers. Hope you're all doing well. You can hear me well, right? Okay. So let's begin. And after the invocation, we'll have questions. So Siddharth, Brahmachari Hari and Brahmacharini Divya, I'll be asking one after the questions and you please answer them. And I'll add whatever has to be added. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः Hari Om everyone, welcome. The magic of prayers I think did work. We have one more joined in. So let me put Siddharth on spot. Hari Om Siddharth.
Hare Swamiji, ఎలా ఉన్నారు?
కుశలంగా ఉన్నాను.
శుభం.
నువ్వు ఎలా ఉన్నావు నాన్న?
నేను కూడా బాగున్నాను.
నువ్వు గుడ్ బాగున్నావా?
నేను కూడా బాగున్నాను.
కూడా బాగున్నా
కూడా.
వెరీ గుడ్. So my question to you is a basic question. When you read such an intensely technical chapter, what is the purpose of studying a chapter of 5 sheets, 3 bodies, 3 states? What exactly is the purpose of it?
I'd say the purpose is the following. It is a technique, a way to try to understand, a way to have the buddhi, to try to comprehend and to peel off the different layers. It's like a construct in a way to help organize and understand how identification and how each different aspect of a jiva and their identification is. And it's a tool for the buddhi to help try to do that nirmatanam before you try to realize like what is left after all those sheets, or after those have been disidentified, the chaitanyam that's left. So it's a tool to help us try to think and understand and analyze.
Okay. Fair enough. A good opening, I would say. Divyama, would you like to add anything to it?
Yes. And is my audio clear?
Very clear.
Okay, cool. So the main purpose of studying all of these different ways of looking at the ubadis is to really come to the conclusion that none of these are me. And we want to specifically look at when Swamiji had given the story of Guru Ashtavakra, who heard the comments from the Shishyas in King Janaka's court, who were laughing at his figure and said, these are the students. I'm sorry, I mixed up the story. When King Janaka-ji asked what about his dreams, saying, I'm a beggar in my dream, but I'm a king in, this waking world. But both seem to be experiences. Which one is real? The Guru ended up saying that both are unreal. And that right there is the key, that when we study these upadis, yes, it is to come to understand how they function, have control, have access, and that only comes from understanding that none of these are me, and it's just vehicles for me to fine-tune my control and access on them. But the original purpose of all of this is to really understand the neti process, that none of these are actually me. And I think Swamiji had given a very important statement that in our shastras, even if we expand outside of ourselves and think about the whole cosmos from a macro standpoint, when we speak of creation, it is not to prove its validity, but to prove its invalidity, that it's unreality, because that substratum, that Brahman, is the only reality that exists. So this is the purpose of even investigating in any of this, and this is important to remember, so that we don't get lost into just another science.
Hari? do you want to add something to this? Because it is the prayojana of the entire, almost the text even.
I would add that along with the purpose that's been laid out, the beauty of these prakriyas that are listed specifically, whether it's the 5 sheaths, 3 bodies, or 3 states, the adhikara that someone needs, the qualification to study Vedanta, is someone who is looking for that ultimate happiness. And that's something everyone desires, whether we know it or not. And so when it comes to these prakriyas here, for example, the 3 states, there's no mysticism associated with it. There's no special qualification to delve into it. It's not that you need an experience to understand what it is. That's something we go through all the time. So the beauty here is through the simplicity of the process, yet there's so much depth and intellectualization that can be done. So the importance really lies in the purpose is, if I'm to understand this true self, not being bogged down thinking that it's some special experience I have to have, some kind of special knowledge out of reach for me, but it's starting at where I am right now, what I observe, what I'm capable of observing on a daily basis, just looking at my own personality and what I'm going through, taking me from there to the heights of understanding simply through that process that Shastra provides. That's the beauty of it there.
What should be the end result of this prakriya?
That unwavering understanding that what I've always thought to be, me being this body, this mind, this intellect, all these layers that are given, I am not that. I am what that ultimate reality is, what Shastra asserts, and that's done going through this process layer by layer, negating everything that I'm not.
Okay. Thank you all. How do we remove everybody's spotlight? Well, I think let us continue with the second question. I like this format. Arun and Tanu, you're okay with that, right? Okay, good. Arun?
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay, good.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So, Siddharth, we'll jump into the next question and we'll pick on you.
Okay.
The second question for you is, when pure consciousness identifies itself with the causal body, it manifests itself as the deep sleeper, who goes through the homogeneous experience of nothingness, complete ignorance. What is the evidence that deep sleep is an experience of complete cessation of all experiences, aka nothingness?
So Swamiji had given this example, had asked this question in one of the previous sessions for this chapter, that with the aspect of memory, right? And during Sushupti, during that deep sleep, Swamiji had said that there is some aspect of the antakarana, that is the memory aspect, that is trying to record whatever is happening, but there's nothing happening to begin with. The manas and the buddhi are both, I guess, in some form of laya there. And so the fact that we remember after waking up that the sleep was good and there was nothing, you remember that something was pleasant, but you don't have any memory of like what had happened because nothing had happened, though both buddhi and the manas were both not available at that point. So it is that fact that there exists something else, some other entity, which would be the Chaitanya reflecting on Antakarana at that point, that was still conscious, that was still the witness at the Sakshi during Sushupti, even if the Manas and the Buddhi were not available, or even the Shariram as well.
Okay. Hari, do you want to add anything to it?
Actually have nothing to add to that, Swami.
Okay. Siddharth, I think you nailed it. Good job. I think we have been going on this particular question at least for about last 2-3 chapters. It's a repetitive but an important topic. Good. Now that we have Hemant, let's pull up Hemant So all three of you go back. I'll call you back. Hari Om Hemant. Are you guys able to pull your spotlights out? Okay. There we go. How are you, man?
நல்லா இருக்கேன் சுவாமிஜி. சுவாமிஜி எப்படி இருக்கார்?
நான் சூப்பரா இருக்கேன். Okay, let's start with a question for you. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So in the book it says, the awareness that an individual possesses a given thought, such as decision, is another thought, and its functional name is ego. Simply said, it is a feeling of I-ness and minus. Then the question is, how is it possible to have functional thoughts but still work selflessly?
Okay. And the best way I can put this is that even that feeling of wanting to work for a greater good, that feeling of, this is greater than me, even that feeling of, I'm not doing this for my own sake, even that's still a ego concept right there, because at the end of the day, I'm focusing on why I'm doing a certain thought. So I guess to really answer that, it's still possible to have that notion of, not, doing it for my own, glory, my own fame or anything like that, and work for a greater purpose. But at the same time, still have that notion that I am doing it. This is my work. Hence, that's where the ego comes in. And hence, that's where the idea of working selflessly but with functional thoughts comes. At least this is what I think.
Okay. I think you touched upon few important topics, but let's see if Hari Chaitanya has anything to add to it.
One word that comes to mind.
1 second, Hari.
Oh, sorry. Oh, spotlight. Okay. One word that comes to mind to answer this question is bhakti, where if that connection to Bhagavan is there such a strong way, that what this assemblage is doing here is doing nothing for itself, but simply working to purify itself and working for that Bhagavan, then that idea of I-ness and minus cannot but seep away. And the verbiage is so important here. I remember we were running a CHYK camp several years ago, and we proposed to Swami Sarveshananda different ideas for a tagline of what the camp should be. So we settled on a title. A theme was "Be a Tool" was the theme of it. Tongue in cheek, be a tool. But the tagline was more important, where we said, how about the idea of being an instrument? So we said, be a tool, an instrument by the Lord. And Swamiji said, no, tweak that tagline. When you say by the Lord, that's a different entity from what Bhagavan is. That's not the right way of looking at it. Okay, an instrument for the Lord. How about that? That's that seva bhava, dasa bhava. Swamiji still said no. Still doesn't sound right. That still is that difference there where you're doing it for that Bhagavan. It's still not what it should be. We finally settled on an instrument of the Lord, and that captures that essence so well. That there is not that difference there, but that I-ness and minus for it to be completely lost, seeing myself as an instrument of that Bhagavan, that's really the only idea that really connects that together. That's an example that came to mind.
One more aspect that I'll add is, it seems to be a conundrum wherein at one point we are saying that anything that which we associate, there is this ego, I-ness and minus will develop. Any kind of movement, any kind of action that is performed. And at the same time we are saying, be selfless, be egoless, absence of ego. How can both coexist? As Hemant did point out, both coexisting is an oxymoron. It's not a possibility. But there is a gradual step-by-step growth that is indicated in through all the scriptures. It starts from a tamasic mindset growing into rajasic, a rajasic into sattvic, and the sattvic growing into its own true nature of Atma Chaitanya or Sakshi Bhava. But until we reach there, there is no point that happens where the action is happening, but there is no ego. Until that Sakshi Bhava happens. For the rest of us, our effort should be how sattvic am I getting to in and through every single action, and how well am I able to dedicate the action, including its resources and results. It's not just the action, but the resources and the results of it, I offer it to Bhagavan. Yadyat karma kritam tattad akhilam shambho tavaradhanam. That, hey Bhagavan, it is in your worship that every act has been invoked, engaged in. When we get to that level of conscious effort, where there is no scope, no room for saying that, I did something which was an inadvertent mistake. No, I have consciously engaged in it, and everything that has been engaged in is for the Bhagavan through these instruments, because ultimately it is of the Bhagavan alone. That's why we say in the Arati famously, Tera tujhko arpan kya lage mera. Where is even the scope of minus that is being offered? It is all Bhagavan's which is being offered to Bhagavan alone. It's like the child asking the dad for $10 so that he could buy a greeting card to wish that dad a happy Dad's Day. But this is the gesture, right? It is a gesture of dedication. It's a gesture of offering it. And the dad goes, all teary-eyed, oh, thank you. You're taking it. Everything is Father's, and you're giving it back to that father on the Father's Day. Similarly, what aspect of this creation is not Bhagavan? Everything that which is nothing but Bhagavan, we are offering it back to that Bhagavan, and with that dedication is where we have the opportunity to transcend this ego and function yet in this world without ego. So that's the goal. Okay, I'll stop with this question here. Hemant, stay back. I have another question for you. Are you ready, Hemant?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Now, what is moksha? And while explaining it, can you include the concepts of causal body and the specifics of avidya, and how does it relate to moksha?
Okay. Okay, well, moksha, first of all, I'll give a definition, and before I really jump into the concepts of everything else. So, okay, moksha loosely termed is termed liberation or freedom, which I mean, I don't think that's the true definition though, because I've been told many times that if you truly want to translate from Sanskrit to English, you don't actually find a true definition for that. But I guess that's as close as you can get to it. So what moksha means though, I think in essence is when you're able to reach a state where you don't let thoughts and actions and anything else determine anything around you, whether it's your BMI or anything. So I will not at all claim that I'm even 1% close to discovering what that really means. But, and I guess in relation to the causal body, I mean, if that's where the bliss sheath, the Anandamaya kosha, is termed, then I guess moksha is basically when you have, or I guess moksha in terms of the causal body is when, well, you still have to transcend the Anandamaya kosha. You can't really, it's not something that you stay in, but I guess it's when the causal body is the deep sleep state where there are no thoughts. So I guess in relation to that, moksha also is when, you've reached a state of thoughtlessness. So I am not sure if that is really correct or not, but that's the way I understand it. With the relation to the causal body and moksha, is they're both a state of thoughtlessness. And yeah.
Ouch. The last two sentences is where you finally watched it pretty right royally. Let's see where and how it has to be corrected. Let's bring in Brahmacharini Divya so that. Go ahead, Divya.
Hariom. So I will start with causal body and make my way to the concept of moksha. So the causal body, often we immediately jump to saying that it's a deep sleep state, but I would rather start from understanding the causal body as the layers of vasana and the layer of ignorance. Because, and the logic that was given was that vasanas produce karma, and the karma feeds back into the vasana, and it's a cycle. And again, Swamiji had once asked that question, if it's a tree before the seed or seed before the tree, which one comes first? It's actually a third concept that triggers this entire cycle, which is ignorance. That's the most important definition when we think about in terms of causal body or this bliss sheath, is the fact that in its most, I guess, I don't know if I would use this word, but pure or like pure form, is that it's the layer of ignorance. So when it comes to moksha, what we want to understand is that moksha is the removal of avidya. And so when we say liberation, again, that's like third, fourth, degrees of definition, translation that has arisen. So we have to come back to maybe the first or second. That avidya of my own true nature is a thing that I need to become free of. Then my own natural state will reveal itself. So moksha is realization of my own true self by negating and removing that avidya. So I think those two terms of trying to define moksha with the involvement of causal body helps us not come to the conclusion that realization is thoughtlessness, because Swamiji had given that if we start saying that it's a thoughtless state, I can achieve that in deep sleep. Deep sleep is not the same as moksha. So it's very important for us to be careful in not saying that it's a no mind state. I hope I was comprehensive with my answer.
Good addition. Let's see if Harigaru, do you want to add anything?
Just
Bring him a spotlight, please.
sorry. Spotlight. Okay. So if we're seeing,
It almost feels, before you go to the answer, it almost feels surreal, like the Star Trek Beam Me Up, Scotty. Like, you come in here. Okay, let's not get deviated. Continue.
so moksha can be translated as release or freedom. If we're looking at it that way, freedom from what then? Bondage. What is this bondage? We see it several times given as karma bandhana, that because I perform actions, I accrue results from those. And to live out those results, either in the immediate future or remote future, in having to take the next life, fulfilling that result of the karma that I've done. Now, if we're going upwards, working backwards from that karma up to that causal body, we find that because of those tendencies and vasanas, impressions that have been layered onto my personality from actions done in the past, that is what's stored in the causal body. And when they are stored there, they can only be expressed with the existence of a subtle body and a gross body to carry out and live out those karmas, the results of what I've done. And therefore, the causal body is like the storehouse. Why does it continue to persist then, life after life after life? Simply because of that avidya. That avidya is what creates these likes and dislikes, acting on those strengthens these vasanas. And until these vasanas are exhausted and the dawn of knowledge comes where I get rid of that avidya, I keep living and persisting in this cycle again and again and again. So the causal body is a very important role that it plays. Understanding that, as it's been pointed out, that eradication of avidya then is that bondage that exists that makes me go through all of this. So if we look at it as moksha from this perspective of release and a freedom from bondage, we work our way up from karma all the way to looking at why the causal body exists and the avidya that makes it persist.
Fair enough. Now that all these different perspectives are put in, I think the question gets its due diligence answered. One thing, as I would like to re-emphasize, because of Hemant, what you ended with, that both moksha as well as deep sleep are pretty much the same because both are thoughtless state. No, moksha is not considered as a thoughtless state. Moksha is considered as the state of conscious being. And of course, the deep sleep state is a state where the mind is non-functional, so therefore there is no thought. And I love it where Divya brings in the concept of it being the layers of vasana, and therefore that vasana has to be worked at. It is also the layer of not just the vasana, but it is also the layer of the avidya, and that avidya can be removed only through ekaika sadhanam, and that is jnana sadhanam. Without jnana, that avidya cannot be worked at. So that has to be included in the answer. Do you have a question? Seem like. Okay, go ahead, shoot.
Yeah, so then is moksha then actually transcending also that deep sleep state, like fully then, and like what is causing deep sleep?
Moksha is transcending everything that which is a projected reality. Who is sleeping? Picking on your question, who is sleeping?
My notion of me.
Is that a projected reality?
I think so.
So when all the projections are denounced, left behind, and you transcend it, does this also get transcended? Should it not get transcended?
It should.
Exactly. But there is a catch. Until the sharira of the realized one drops by itself in its final act of dropping everything, until then this whole thing seems to persist. It cannot be the other way. Until then you see that there is this layer of sleep that will continue deep sleep, I mean, it will continue even for a realized one. That brings in a good comprehensiveness to this entire question. Okay, now let's bring back Siddharth. Hari Om, Siddharth.
Hari Om.
Should I say long time no see? Okay, another basic critical question that I would ask is, okay, there is this phenomena of projecting and identifying is called superimposition. What are some of the good examples to understand this projection and identification?
So for this, I guess like the superimposed adhyaropa of it, I think like the classical example of the Rajju Sarpa, like the rope and the snake, that's often given is a great example to start with, is that there exists a rope, and from our ignorance, from whether there's lack of lighting, I guess the symbolic like light of knowledge there, that we have the avaranam of it, that it's covered, that we don't see its true nature, and because of that we have the vikshepa, we have that projection of something that is not what it actually not is onto that. So we see it as a snake, and from which we have the fear that comes from that the misapprehension, and then the non-apprehension, which leads to the misapprehension of it. And but once it's removed, once the light is shown, they all dissolve away from it. And there's also the example of like the scarecrow. This is similar. I think they all mostly fall in the same kind of category.
Okay, Hari?
So two things. One, when it comes to the semantics of the example, there are very subtle differences there. Because normally we do say the rope and the snake when we give the example. But if we consider the verbiage there, when we say rope and the snake, we're implying that there are two real existent entities there. But the truth of the example is there's only one. So the way to say it would be then the snake on the rope. That's what the misapprehension that we're attributing there is, the snake on the rope, because there's only one existent entity there, which is that rope. We're perceiving it as a snake because of ignorance there. That's a superimposition. Now, there are many examples that abound like this, whether it's the silver in the shell, different examples like that. If we were to personalize it then and see trigger points for me, how this expresses is anything that is not me, I throw onto me and attribute it as myself. So when there is honor or dishonor, for example, someone insulting me, what I see as me, they're insulting me. At that point, what are they really insulting? Is it this body assemblage? Is it my mental state? Is it my intellectual capacity? That really hurts, right? Is it my intellectual capacity they're insulting? Any one of these things are something that's not me, simply an equipment. That's like a potter getting mad if someone insults his clay. You wouldn't get angry about that. In the same way, I have to laugh at myself because that's a superposition that through non-apprehension, I've misapprehended it now, embraced and owned it completely, taken someone else's garbage, smeared it on myself at this point, and that really leads to more sorrow for myself. So personalizing it that way, some examples come up there.
I think there's nothing much to add from my side. There's more to discuss on it, but that's fine. I think whatever has been answered, it gives a good comprehensiveness to it. Would you want to continue or can we stop? I think major questions have been asked. I just picked those major questions. The reason I'm ending up this early is not just because less participation. There's another reason, is today happens to be a full moon day. And because it is full moon day, there is also this amazing happening or occurrence of this being a eclipse, a lunar eclipse. and that starts in about an hour. The lunar eclipse starts in about an hour, and what traditionally we do is we take a shower and we sit down to do puja and japa. So which is what I would suggest to all of you is we will wind up today and we will continue next week with the next chapter. But if you can check the time of eclipse in your region, at least in Texas, it is from 8:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. So you take a shower and then you go take a sankalpa to sit down and continue the japa until the end of the eclipse, and then you take a shower, do an arati to Bhagwan, and then you can rest. So that is what I plan to intend to be engaged in. So therefore, I would request an early closure for today. It's 20 minutes early, but nonetheless early. So thank you for coming, participating, and we will conclude. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shant Shant Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Take care, everyone. And if you did attempt today to sit down between 8:30 to 1:30 in one posture and be able to do it, please ping us and let us know how your experience was. It'll be awesome. Take care.